In a world full of distractions, there is one big question on every dog owner's lips.
How do I become more than just the person holding the other end of the leash?
We all get dogs with a dream in mind, a vision of the future. And if right now your everyday reality isn't quite that picture you had in mind, you are in the right place.
It really doesn't have to be this way.
You absolutely can and will be more to your dog than just the person who gets in between them and the world.
The key is you need to be more sexy.
More sexy than the neighbourhood cat.
More sexy than the jogger in the park.
More sexy than that half-eaten hamburger they just found on the floor.
And yes, even more sexy than the dog across the road.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Lauren.
Together we're Absolute Dogs.
And you're listening to the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast, the podcast that teaches you how to be the very best dog owner your dog could ever wish for, conquer the environment, get rid of those distractions and create the dog that you dreamed of and that relationship that goes with it. Now, today is a very, very special episode because we have
a special episode because we have the amazing Ann McGloon, and Ann McGloon is a super cool dog trainer, a great friend, a great follower of Absolute Dogs, and in her own right has achieved some really, really great things. And we welcome Ann, Ann in another space, and yet still in this room in our Zoom. And actually, tell us a little bit about you, Ann. Tell us maybe what you do, who you are, what it's all about for you.
Oh my gosh. So, so I'm a dog trainer. I didn't start out as a dog trainer like most of us. But I found you guys, Absolute Dogs, back in, I want to say it was 2015, maybe.
Oh
maybe it might have even been earlier.
How have you put up with us for so long?
She's patient. She's patient.
Yeah, and I remember joining Relationship Deep Dive, one of your first online classes, and I haven't really looked back. And it the ethos and methodology that you guys train with is very similar to how I've always trained my dogs. And so it was just a perfect mesh. I started mostly doing search and rescue work with my dogs back in, 2006 is when I started with the canine aspect of search and rescue. And while I'm on a little leave of absence right now for the past year, this morning I'm going back to SAR training. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to give it another go since my mental break is over.
Wow.
How exciting. And so tell us a little bit about kind of the kind of little like the niche, or the big niche kind of area or specialism of training that you really enjoy.
So I'm scent training. Anything related to scent training really is kind of my passion, my love. Like I mentioned, I've been involved in search and rescue training, and I've certified a number of different types of dogs in different disciplines. And now I'm coaching, and I just really, really enjoy it. I can't really describe it. I know that Lauren's been doing some cool stuff with the police.
It's so funny.
So
Ann always asks me.
She's getting a little bit addicted.
Yeah, Ann always asks me. She always says, "Are you with the police again? Are you with the police?" Oh, like sussing it out. And Ann and I have this ongoing little conversation. It is really addictive, Ann. You're so right. Like I know it's your absolutely your bag, and at the same time I love how you're like, oh Lauren, are you there again? Like I love that you're really like excited by that. So when you say scent, Ann, maybe just could you give us like a broad overview of all of what that encompasses for you, like what sort of areas we might be considering through that?
So my experience primarily has been in search and rescue, like I mentioned. And there are three basic types of search dogs that I'm very experienced with. And one is the wilderness air scenting dog. And that was my first discipline that I ventured into with my first dog, Beryl. And wilderness air scenting is very similar to hunting, except for you're hunting instead of a bird or another animal, a rabbit or something. You're hunting for people. You're hunting for the lost person. And then I also got involved in man trailing, which I know is becoming very, very popular as a sport, which I think is really cool. And I also do a lot of high precision tracking, which is a little different than man trailing. And then also detection work. And mostly my experience in detection work has been on human remains detection, so body recovery sort of aspect.
Wow.
Like, it is incredible just to hear that. And is it something that anybody can do with their dog, Anne? Like, how about, like, some people might be listening to this, and I know that especially in the world right now, I think so many people are easily overwhelmed, and there's that whole imposter syndrome for so many people. And I think that people might immediately say, oh, well, Anne sounds like she's a complete expert. Should I ever even consider getting involved in something like this? Is this something that many breeds or other breeds can get involved in? Is this something any person can get involved in?
So yes and no. I'm going to answer it that way. Yes and no, because I have seen, I started with a very unique breed. In fact, the 4 dogs that I certified were all Sussex Spaniels, which is a rare, vulnerable British breed. And I'm the only person in the entire world that's ever used that breed for search and rescue.
Wow.
So they're not common. And I've seen Papillons. I've seen wire-haired pointing Griffons. I've seen a lot of breeds that aren't typical. That doesn't mean that any dog can be a search and rescue dog. And I see a lot of, we get a lot of questions. My dog loves to sniff. I want to do search and rescue. So it's more about it's not just about the dog. It's about, it's really about the missing person. And it takes a lot of commitment from the handler, as well as to have the proper type of dog that has the proper drives, the proper confidence, that's going to go out and work all day. But as a handler, it takes a toll on you. You have to, you have a lot of training yourself. You go out on a lot of searches without your dog. And so people lose sight of the fact that they just want to go search with their dog, but they're going to have to search. They're going to have to search a lot of times without their dog. They're part of a team.
I was probably also, I should have clarified my question maybe better, and I was thinking more scent. So when we said about scent, is that something that lots of dogs can get involved in and lots of people can get involved in? Just scent generally, as like, I know that that's one of your passions. So yeah, I probably should have clarified my question better for you. It's fine though.
It's okay. I get off on tangents. It's really
no, you're all good.
So
you're all good.
No problem. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Any dog can do scent work. I mean, in terms of, just simple scent games, simple things. I mean, the one cool thing about coaching and coaching online is I have been fortunate to work with, oh my gosh, I think almost every breed out there, from bull mastiffs to lurchers, to your common breeds, obviously, but Dalmatians, all sorts of breeds of dogs, all sorts of mixes, simple scent games. And you know what? It's really enriching and really, it really highlights and advances the bond between the handler and the dog, because we're starting to get now into, our poor dogs are in our visual world, but now we're finally getting to enter their olfactory world. And so the communication between the two really enhances, and it's just a joy to see.
And so I guess I can't help but put my behaviour hat on here and get excited about what scent might mean for dogs with struggles, whatever the struggles might be. And I wonder, Anne, if you could just kind of talk a little bit about some of the dogs that you've worked with who have had other struggles. Maybe it's reactivity or just general lack of focus. And
or
how,
naughty but nice, right?
Yeah, naughty but nice type dogs, how scent has impacted them and their lives.
I think the largest and the biggest impact is confidence. Their confidence just blossoms. They're more comfortable in their bodies. They're more comfortable in the environment, and the focus that's required for scent work also kind of blocks the environment. So they get focused on their task, and the rest of the environment kind of fades away a little bit. I've had dogs that are like, say, tracking, and they're indicating an article, and they're really focused on, something silly like a washer or a coin, and other dogs are walking by and they're not even paying attention. It's just brilliant. And to be honest, my last certified SAR dog, Tolly, he was a little bit NBN. And yet when he was working and when he was man trailing, the whole world just disappeared for him. It was it's huge for those dogs. It really is.
That's so cool, because I see this a lot in behavior consults where people will say to me, I can't go for a walk with my dog without them like reacting to every dog or every noise, but they can go to scent class and they just behave impeccably the whole time, it's so cool that you see that as well.
So I'm thinking, Anne, I know that our listeners are going to be loving this, and I know they're going to want to have a go at something at home. And I know that there are lots of games, both in what we do and in what I've seen you do, that people could easily have a go at a couple of things. There are a couple of things that would help them along the way. If we were to think of like a couple of simple games or a couple of simple things that someone could teach their dog on the way to sort of growing some ideas of scent, what might be useful sort of early starter games or things to do with the dog?
So one of the games that I like to play right away with dogs is I like to have them to indicate on an article, and that can be anything. That can be a coin, that can be a little bauble. It can really be anything within, that's safe for the dog. And essentially they start really, it looks like a nose touch. But they start indicating on it, and you can build that through reward placement, very simple techniques. And then you start to just move it around a little bit. And so what I like to do is I will play on a carpet that is visually complex. And if you pick the right color object, like I play a lot with the 2 pence piece, which I know is, it just fills your change buckets, right? Because it's a perfect color. It's kind of that reddish color, so it blends into everything. And I just start moving it around on the carpet. And in less than, 3 minutes, I have a tired dog because they've had to really search to find that coin and to put their nose on it. And it's a super easy game. And one of my students actually this morning, she messaged me and said she was out walking her dog and she had coins in her pocket. And as she was out walking her dog, she played this simple game and she started to hide it in simple places, not complex, not hard places to hide it, but simple places. And she was like, wow, the environment just kind of faded away and he did fabulously. And I like it because you always have change in your pocket. So that's like one of my favorite simple games I like to start playing. And you can then advance that game into more of a nose work detection aspect and just keeping it really fun and easy. And it's great.
No, we love I think we love that, and I know that our listeners are going to love that. So if we think about like the perfect age or time to start training, like when should people, I know like most people in agility, for example, there's a misconception in agility that you should wait for your dog to be a year old. When they are finally a year old, go forth and jump them. And that for me is like one of those moments of going, oh dear Lord, like it's such a misconception, because whilst I don't necessarily do things like jumping my, 10-week-old puppy, that for me doesn't sit right for me. And at the same time, I definitely do a lot of foundation work, and my dogs are doing foundation work from realistically when they arrive with me, 8 weeks old. So what about you? Like, how do you feel about this are there things that anybody listening can do with a young dog, or what sort of age might you start things? Like, we know you've grown a fantastic young dog. What are some of your sort of tips, tricks, and maybe secrets?
So my little working cocker Millie, she's an amazing little dog. And I started her on scent work pretty much the minute she came home. So to me at about 10 weeks. So she's dying, maybe I started her a week later at 11 weeks. But we did little puppy trails with kibble, just getting the nose working. And for those dogs that are working dogs, right? So any of your working line, your sporting dogs that want to work, that really have a drive to work, your hounds, I want to build that. I want to give them that outlet right away almost, because I want them to develop that sense. And I want it to be with me. So that's really important. It's that relationship with me I don't want my dog just out free hunting. I want them hunting for me and with me. And so we do it as a team together. The other thing that I do a lot of is I do spend a lot of time on foundation, getting my dog used to different surfaces and different environments. And again, no pressures, no rules, just together out exploring, working together in that aspect. Is interesting. In nose work and in scent work, people start placing hides, and a lot of times they make it too difficult. And dogs really have to have the confidence to search in an aspect. If you think about it, a simple game that you guys play, the cone game, right? Where you have your dog stick the head in the cone, right? Well, if a dog isn't comfortable doing that, sticking their head in the cone, how will, say, for example, a drug dog feel about sticking their head in a tailpipe? Or how will your nosework dog feel about sticking their head under a table or under a chair? So all those foundational games that we see, through Absolute Dogs, the cone game and Cardboard Chaos and the noise, all those games are my foundational games for scent work, because I have to have that confidence in my dog to stick her head in places, to go places, to jump up on things, to go under things, over things. Really, really important. And quite honestly, I don't think enough folks in the professional aspect of scent work do enough of that. I'd like to see them do more.
I love hearing you say it, because it's like we share the best games. Like it for me, when I'm watching, I see the flip side of people in agility. I watch them. Tom and I were just watching a video a minute ago, actually, before we started this, of someone training their young dog to start line weight and then go over jumps. And it's like 12 weeks old. And the dog looks already a bit tired with it. And he's only just starting out. Like, I see so much passion in your young dog. I see so much energy, so much joy, so much drive. Like, people are all after this infamous, like, drive. And it's like, this is created. This is grown. She did not come like this. You grew this. You've done a magical job. And we watch and we see it. And I also think so many people get they get starstruck by the end product. So I was doing exactly what you said. I was working with the police only recently, and I sent someone a video of the wall. So the wall that they were working on. And that person came straight back at me and said, "Oh my God, I want a wall just like that. If I had a wall like that, my training would be amazing." And all I can see is this amazing little dog finding less than 1 millimeter of material, 1 millimeter in the wall that's been placed in the wall. And I'm looking at this dog with an amazing indication, with amazing self-control, with brilliant grit, with brilliant pushiness, with the ability to work for 10 minutes solid against this wall that really is it's quite complex for the dog. And yet the person focused on the wall and what they focused on, what they wanted in that whole thing. And yet this is what often goes wrong in training, right? Like, we focus on the wrong thing. And I'm not saying I don't do it too. I can look at the end agility picture and go, I focus on that. And I love that you said it all comes back to the foundation. So if you were to pick your 3 top foundation sort of what are you looking for most of all? So like, what do you want when we think foundation? Because for me, I can think of what I want, but what do you want for your foundation?
So I go back to confidence. That to me is probably the most important thing. I need a confident dog. For professional scent work in particular, I need a pup that's going to be able to handle a lot of different environments, being able to handle getting in a helicopter, being able to handle all day out in the field, being transported in different vehicles that aren't just my vehicle. So I need a dog that's confident. So I want to build that confidence, and I do it through games. I do it through surface work. I do a lot of surface work. I do a lot of proprioception. I do a lot of independence work. So a lot of foundations. I also pull from the gun dog world, which is kind of where I got my start. So I do a lot of directionals. I want an independent dog. So simple things like just wrapping. I want be able to send my dog away from me. Some breeds of dogs, they're excellent workers, but it's their style. They kind of hang close. A lot of the herding dogs tend to hang close. So I want to build that independent drive away from me a little bit. Even my Sussex, they worked within gun range. So my little Beryl, she would be maybe, 300 feet ahead of me searching. And that's as far as she would go. but I was able to work with that. It worked out just fine. So confidence is really, really big for me. Focus, that's another huge one. I need a dog to focus and to stay focused on task. We ask our dogs in search and rescue, particularly where I live in, because most of our searches are wilderness searches. So we may be out for 6 hours, 8 hours, all night. So we take breaks, obviously, but the dog has to be able to maintain focus for a long period of time on task. And if you have a wilderness air scenting dogs, a lot of times those dogs are asked to what's called clear an area. So they're given a massive amount of acreage. 160 acres is our testing acreage. Wow. So you could be out there for several hours and there's nothing there. And that's important information to say there's nobody here. But that takes a great amount of focus. So focus, confidence, and my third would probably be, oh gosh, there's so many. I think probably grit and tenacity would probably be my next one, because I want my dog to be able to just work through everything, keep going, not be concerned about things, and not give up. And not quit.
I love hearing all of this from you, because working again with the police very, very recently, that's exactly what they're looking for too. That sometimes actually there is nothing. So as much as you might look at that as they are unsuccessful, actually they're very successful because they're telling you there is nothing here. And at the same time, for the dog and the whole like mechanism of like what is reinforcing, and actually it's a really interesting it's an interesting game, and it's an interesting sort of session. It's very different.
The cool thing is that there are so many parallels, even kind of beyond sort of sports, and actually thinking about, your naughty but nice type dogs, where we've got this end picture in mind of how we want our dream walk to be. We know what the present reality is. It's not quite matching it. And we know that, just as Anne's saying, it's not the big wins that create it. It's the small wins that make the big wins. It's the foundation, it's the concepts, it's the reshaping of the brain. Then the big wins happen as kind of a side effect of that. And if we force those big wins early, well, we get the opposite.
And I love how it all pieces together, and it doesn't really, like, all of the games, they fit in so many different worlds and so many different ways. Like it all works like so nicely.
And I have to say, it is quite amazing, because a lot of, and I see this a lot, and I know you see it in agility. You get your dog and immediately you start in those skill sets, those agility skill sets, or, in search and rescue, it might be, I'm immediately getting my dog out to training, and we're training, and you haven't done any of the foundational training. So I have to tell a little story, because I love telling little stories.
Please do.
So the other day, gosh, this is 2 times I'm going to go to training. I went to training the other day as well, and I had a article search where a gal had driven down a road and thrown out her hat. I didn't know what she threw out, but she threw out something. And then she had given me an article of hers, and she went off to do something else in another part of the training grounds. And I took my young dog, Millie, and she had never done this before. And I gave her the scent article, and she was to work off lead, and she was to article search. So I had her free hunting to find the matching article. And she had never done it before. All the foundation training, her gun dog training, she quartered, she worked with me. I recalled off geese. We had a flock of geese that were at the article and then had moved away. And she kept working, and she ranged, and she listened to cues, and she indicated on the hat where I didn't know where it was. And it was like all the pieces came together, and it was just all the foundation training, and we had never done that exercise before.
Wow.
And it's incredible. And
also, Anne is officially sexier than geese.
Officially, Anne is sexier than a goose. In fact, multiple. So yes, geese. In fact, and at the same time, I just think, isn't it that moment where you kind of, you know, all of the concepts work. We all appreciate and love all of the games, and yet when it comes together, it's still like a big win. We're still like, yes, like this has been a really cool thing. Like that's a really nice. It's a really nice space to be in. So Anne, I'm thinking, tell us. Could you maybe tell us like a typical? I think our listeners would love to hear about it. And I know there's probably no typical, but how does like a search and rescue sort of mission look? Like, how does it come about? Like, what's the sort of process? And I'm already like hugely jealous, because as much as I've been out with the police a lot and been on some really various like different missions, I have not yet been in a helicopter. So you know what? I'm going to get on the case for this one. I'm like, helicopter, come on, my police team. I'm gonna be talking to them. A boat and a helicopter, they're my next two wishes. So they keep saying to me, because I've been working with the GP dogs as well, do you want to be brought down by a dog? I was like, no, I have no wish for this, but I do want to go in a helicopter. So tell me, Anne, how does it look? A day, a mission, how does it come about? What happens?
So it probably is going to vary, across the globe how it works. But where I live, we would basically get a phone call as the unit leader. I would get a phone call from our SAR deputy, who was a member of the sheriff's office, a deputy in the sheriff's office, and say, hey, we have a search. And we're on call 24/7. So this could, trust me, it always happens Sunday night when it's raining is usually when the call comes in. Very, very typical. Someone's lost. Someone hasn't returned from their weekend away. And we would either have to deploy directly to we called it a SAR barn, so our SAR headquarters, and then further deploy from there, or depending on the type of person that was lost, say for example, it was someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, we would go as canine unit, we would go direct to that home or that facility where the person was missing from. Often, and it was really nice because we it's a small town, so we would get quick response. I would often show up before the police would show up, so I would have to go in and start doing some interviewing, and I could start deploying my dog even before anybody came. I didn't like to do that because it's nice to have backup. You never go out without backup. And then from there we would, depending on the type of call, would deploy. So sometimes it would be in town like that, where we would go direct. We would, the K9 unit was always asked to come first. Our SAR unit, our whole SAR organization had a K9 unit, a mountain rescue unit. We have a dive team. We have a vehicle team, a radio team. So it's a huge organization, over 100 people. And now if it's in the wilderness, we've had those searches where, and I live in a very rural county where, quite honestly, it can take about an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours of a drive just to get where the person was last seen or last felt that they last were. Wow. And then we have a whole SAR team that is managing the search operation. So trying to deploy the correct resources for the correct problem at hand. Again, getting the canine team out there, the right type of canine out there, because there's several different types for the search at hand, and then you're deploying. And like I said, we do go with a support person, but we take a 72-hour pack with us, because there are times when you aren't going to come back that day. You're going to spend the night out in all kinds of weather, and you have to be able to spend the night out with your dog in the woods.
Wow.
Oh, what an adventure. What an adventure, though. I mean, Anne, that's incredible. And so how many dogs and people typically on a search and rescue sort of team?
Again, it's going to depend. Our team is pretty robust. When I started, there was just a couple of us, to be honest. There was one trailing dog, a bloodhound, and myself with Beryl. The air scenting dog, but now the unit is, I want to say, about 6 people and maybe 8 dogs. A couple handlers have 2 dogs, so they may have a trailing dog and an air scenting dog. And I did that as well. I had 2 dogs for a while, and it would depend when I arrived at a search which dog was going to be deployed, depending on the circumstances. But, you know, a team of 6 to 8 is probably fairly typical in size for a canine unit.
Wow. So on that, I love your stories, Anne. And so what I would love to do is give you a bit of an opportunity to share your favorite kind of wow moment story of working with the dog in that kind of context. And really, yeah, I want wow moments, basically.
I have a wow moment. So
Yes.
this is one of my favorite stories, and it has to do with my dog. He was a man trailing dog. His name was Winston. Winston was unique because Winston did not start his SAR training until he was 8 years old, 7 years old. He was a dog
Wow.
I bred and came back to me at that age. He just didn't fit in with his family. So I brought him to training one day. He loved it. I said, what the heck, you know? So I certified him. He was great. So we were called down to a search in Northern California. We belong to a broader organization, so we get called even out of state. And this was in the little town of Etna, California, near the Marble Mountains. And this was May time frame, and some gentleman had been hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail, which is the big long trail that goes all the way along the west coast. But it was May, and so at 6,700 feet there was still snow on the trail, and he got diverted because of snow and disappeared into the wilderness. So Winston and I were asked to, they felt they had a last known point of him. They'd found some footprints in the snow. So we were, first it took like 2 hours to get to Etna. Then we had another hour drive to get to a helicopter point, and we were whisked away at a helicopter at about 2 p.m. and dropped on a ridge line at 6,700 feet. Helicopter couldn't really put the skids down, and we just kind of popped out, and it was windy. And I knew we weren't coming home that night because Lauren, I have flown in a lot of helicopters.
I'm so
it's
jealous.
Really fun. It's better if nobody's shooting at you, but that's another story for another time.
So mean to me. I'm so jealous.
So anyway, we get dropped off, and I started him, and he got pulled into, I think it was called the big wind drainage. He got pulled into a drainage, and this is like the wilderness. This is the epitome of the biggest mountains. I mean, it's snowing. It's starting to snow. It's raining. It's colding. I had support with me, obviously. And he kept picking up wisps of odor. He never really locked onto a trail, but he was picking up wisps of odor in the environment. And then it was clear that we lost it. And it was getting dark. So the only way out was to walk out. So we walked down the mountain as best we could until it got dark. Now, there was a team ahead of us, but they were so far ahead of us we couldn't catch up. And we were on slopes that were 50% grade and shale. And it was really tough going. So we spent the unexpected night out in the woods. We built a fire, and to keep us warm, poor Winston, he curled up with me and shivered all night under my survival blanket. I had luckily had brought enough food and packed the lunch that was given out at base, which was gross, but he ate it. And we had water. And so the next day we kept hiking out. We got up and hiked out, and we hit a stream. Remember, it's May, so the streams are full of runoff and snow melt. And I looked at that stream and went, I can't get across it, right? And so my support person, he was able to get across it. And I just looked at it and thought, Winston can't get across this stream. And so I had to do the only thing I could do, is I tossed his long line across the stream to Bill, and I picked Winston up in my arms and I threw him into the river. And he got reeled across like a fish. And I just sat on a boulder and kind of cried, because here's my partner, the person we're buds, and he's entrusting me with his life, and I have to throw him into a cold river to get him across the stream. And he came out and shook off. And off we went. And we had to do it one more time. It was the hardest hike out I've ever endured. We got down to the bottom of the mountain. We still had 5 more miles to hike out. And then we got the helicopter ride out. And he was such a cool dog. He gets in, it was a Black Hawk helicopter. He gets in, and the National Guard, he gets in and he just lays down, goes to sleep. He's not a care in the world. And all the National Guards guys are taking photographs of poor little Winston. But, it was a wow. It was kind of one of those searches that I will never forget. And it put all of our training to test, right? So how to make the fire, how to survive overnight. We had all our gear with us, how to navigate. There were no trails. That was the other thing. If there were no game trails even. So this is how remote it was. And Winston was following the odor of the team ahead of us. And when we got on the wrong side of the creek and there was no odor, he's like, there's no trail, I shouldn't follow. It took us at one point, the terrain was so bad and the brush was so thick. I think it took us an hour and a half to 2 hours to go 1/4 mile.
That's crazy.
Hands and knees. It's crazy.
And so
it's crazy. It was something I remember, though.
Listening to all of that, I think this is amazing. And I suppose that then the thing everybody wants to know is, did you find anyone?
So the funny thing was, as we were hiking out, we heard that he had been found. He had made himself a shelter, and he was actually okay. And he's at first he declined a helicopter ride out. And I said, oh no, you take the helicopter, dude, because I just spent the night in the woods looking for you.
You're getting home. And you're getting home.
Coming back for you.
You are getting home.
Exactly.
So I think then just very quickly, a lead on from that, what's been your best find? Your best find of all finds? Your best find or your best sort of success?
Gosh, it would probably have to be with Winston again. I mean, Tolly had a beautiful find as well, and Beryl had several assists, and she did some fabulous work up in Oso during the mudslide. But Winston again, it was for an Alzheimer's. It was his second search, and it was for a woman who had walked away from her home at about 11 o'clock at night in the rain. And we got there, and the officers had already searched the house. They'd searched the yard, and she wasn't anywhere to be found. And I started Winston, and he started circling the home. He went down a driveway that they walked every day that went to the river. And that kind of scared me because the river was full at the time. But he turned around. I'm like, okay, he turned around. They had an outbuilding. He searched the outbuilding over and over again. He searched every room. It was a kind of a house that was also a guest house, kind of outbuilding sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, we're in the backyard, and all of a sudden his body language changed, everything changed, and he rushed towards a barbed wire fence and a big cedar tree where the branches were hanging all the way down to the ivy on the ground. And we heard a noise, and we're like, hello? And my flanker at the time said, hi, this is Josephine County Search and Rescue. We're looking for Ruth, because we thought it was the neighbor. And you hear this little squeaky voice back, I'm Ruth. And she had gone out the back door, probably walked 150 feet at the most, walked right over the barbed wire fence, fell under the tree, and had been there for a couple hours. She was so embarrassed, but she, was suffering from dementia. And so she was there, and it took Winston about 15 minutes. And that was probably,
Wow.
it was kind of like the whole circle of life for me in a sense, I mean, here was a little dog that came back to me as a rescue, and he did a good deed, and it just really felt nice.
And when
That's
we talk about
amazing.
like filling yourself up, I mean, gosh, that must feel amazing for you, amazing for the family. amazing for your team, amazing for your family, and actually amazing for all of the listeners that get to share part of that story with you. So thank you so much for sharing that, Anne. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And guys, I think every listener right now will be wanting to go and have a play with scent training in whatever capacity they want to start in. And I think we're all going to go and have a go with that kind of basic find game and indication game with the coin. I for sure
maybe even for sure some cardboard chaos and some confidence games, because actually, just like you said, it all starts with a really solid and a great foundation.
Yeah, can I suggest one more fun game?
Oh, of course, always more games needed. We love a game.
You know, when you're out, especially if you're out with your significant other, or whatever, and you're out walking your dog, have the other person hide from them, and just have them try, and then have your dog. You know, the other person can run away, just a little run away and hide behind a tree. And then have your dog find them. It's really, really fun. One of the relationship games I play with my young dogs when I'm out hiking or even in my yard, when they're puppies, is you're playing with them, and then they, you know how they run off to go explore something? I duck behind a bush or a tree, and oh my gosh, it's the funnest game ever. And you get to see them how they use their senses. So you get to see if they're visual, you get to see if they're air scenting, you get to see if they're ground scenting, and you really get to get a feel about how your dog works and interacts with the environment. And it's just a super fun relationship game. Super fun.
I love that. We once played that and I got stuck in a bush.
Yeah, so it was the funniest thing. It was
that needs to come with a warning.
And I think that's the thing. Like, it's one of those games that I think a lot of us have played at some point and then forget to play again. Yeah. So it's a brilliant reminder, because I remember, as a child with dogs, I would always play this kind of game. Like, it's a very much a game that I would always be doing, like can I sort of catch them out, who can win this game type thing. And I think sometimes we forget to release that inner child again, have a bit of fun, hide in a bush, sometimes get Tom trapped in the bush, which is even funnier. Thank you for adding that one, Anna. It was absolutely beautiful. So I think I can say on behalf of everybody, we have absolutely loved having you part of the Sexier than a Squirrel podcast today. It's been a true pleasure, and I knew it would be. And at the same time, you've exceeded both of our expectations. I know it's really lovely to hear your passion and your energy and your love for scent and all things associated with scent come through. It's really special. So thank you.
So guys, that was this episode of the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast. We will see you in the next episode next week for the next episode.
That's the one we'll see.
That's the one that you will be seeing. So guys, in the meantime, you've got one thing to do, and that is to remember to stay sexy. Hey, before you go, have you taken part in the worldwide Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge?
It's a 25-day online video program, huge energy, amazing community, and over 6,000 people are already taking part.
The only question is, you know where you are today, where do you want to be 25 days from now? Head to absolutedogs.me/sexy.